Hi everyone, I'm Stan from Eagle Vision. I'm here again with Dave Bartholomeusz. Dave, welcome. And we're talking about journey of a property developer and how that's just like a journey of a business owner, business leader, entrepreneur. So last time we talked about startup, we've talked about the why. This one episode, it's all about scale. So we've got the approval to build. How does that now move into the scale phase? So last year, nearly 3,000 companies in construction went under. There's been a lot of tumultuous kind of stuff going on in the industry and the economy. Why is that? What happened?
I want to preface this by saying everything is clear 2020 in hindsight, if that makes sense.
Right.
And there's all these commentators
That's right.
that in 12 months and 5 years and 20 years will tell us what happened. But the market isn't something that happened.
Right.
The market is an occurring phenomenon.
Yeah.
We are doing the market right now. And so just the fact that you're doing this and not a commentator just puts you in a whole different category of a person who's got the courage to actually do this. Not just talk about why is this happening.
Yeah.
There's two things that I've been acutely aware of since the start of COVID, and then watching what's going on with the global superpowers really pushing across Europe, China, US, and really having some argy-bargy there, is that first of all, COVID caused a materials crisis.
Yep.
And everyone that was medium-sized then basically had two options, which was to sit in the middle and die, or try to grow, and either, if the materials crisis sorted itself out, then they would just massively win. Or, if the materials crisis didn't sort them out, they would have to be acquired.
Right.
And we're seeing, 3,000 businesses have gone bust.
Right.
A whole bunch of those businesses haven't gone bust spectacularly.
Yep.
They've been tracking across this crisis and they've been acquired by other businesses because it's the only way to make the economy work in their little micro environment, if that makes sense. And there's no shame in that.
Yep.
And those people are often the CEOs of those companies because they've gone through this process. And the CEO in that other business that's sitting pretty, that's got all the cap base, doesn't know how to do this stuff. And so this person comes through and exits into that, and do they get a crappy financial deal? Yes. But you've got to ask yourself, who are the emerging CEOs? They're the people in the medium-sized companies that were the CEOs that were responsible and got acquired. And then you've got a whole bunch of people that just know nothing about business. And those people are just getting cleaned out. But that if you look at the people that are getting cleaned out, the number of people that are getting cleaned out like that because they don't know what they're doing, it's actually not that much higher than other industry categories. It's just that there's all these other middle market people that know what they're doing that are just looking at the environment and just going, this just can't be a separate business in this environment, can it? And people saying, no, it can't. We actually we don't want to lose the infrastructure of this business, and this business has got great people, and we need to dovetail that into a bigger organisation so that then this business essentially can continue operating under this umbrella, if that makes sense. And that sucks for those teams. But the reality was they made the best of a bad situation because they had two choices really, which is to stay in the middle and die, or to try and go big and hope that the materials crisis sorts itself out. And who would have foreseen that we would have an inflation environment like we have now coming straight in on the back of that? It's a double whammy. That's no one's fault. No one, not even the geniuses at Goldman Sachs, predicted this whole thing to happen this way. No one can predict that. People knew something like that was coming through the pike, but even with that knowledge, it was grow or die. And so there's a whole lot of anxiety that's going on when you look at the numbers. But actually, is the construction market a worse market than it was 2 years ago? Not. That's what I'm saying. It's hard to say. And we're going to have a whole bunch of commentators in 3 years' time telling us that they knew all along because they made a lucky guess this year. But they just made a lucky guess. No one knows what's going to happen. The US could go bankrupt tomorrow. Or the US could be in full expansion, just new monetary theory, running the economy beautifully in 30 years' time. No one knows the answer to that question. And so talking about that inflation environment as though we know what's going to happen is folly.
Right, okay, so it's such high risk. So, and the reason why I wanted to ask that question and start this episode with this, because scale is a fairly regimented, or it should be a fairly structured process. All these people, they couldn't have all been bad operators. They were good operators, good people. They had cash flow projections. They had some idea of how to run a business. So how did so many people, well, obviously high inflation, this and that and the other, right?
It helps until it doesn't help.
Right.
And then it really doesn't help.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So now that we've set the scene a little bit,
Yeah.
a property developer has got a DA approved. They now need to move into building this. What elements do they need to make sure are in place so that things don't go wrong?
And this is where, that's why I wanted to make that proviso of there's no crystal ball here, but we know the environment we're in at the moment, which is there's a materials crisis that's probably never going to resolve. So don't do your decision making based on, is the materials crisis going to resolve? Because
Yeah, fingers crossed, we hope.
well, also, you're not, unless you already have a medium-sized construction business that has cash flow constraints on top of it and it's already encumbered by covenants, you don't have to encumber yourself.
Right.
So don't sign on the dotted line without really thinking about, do I want to develop this or do I want to wait? I've got 2 or 3 other developments that could come through as an opportunity in the next 2 to 3 years and I'll have better visibility and I'll be more skilled at that point. Don't be shy to just exit that, take your cash. You know, it's good cash. It'll keep you going for the next 2 or 3 years.
That's right.
It's not going to get you retired,
Sure.
but you don't need to retire in the next 2 or 3 years. It's not a good retiring environment.
Okay.
It's a good environment for letting the inflation environment keep escalating. Money's going to keep getting easier to get, regardless of who wins. China, Europe, even if India wins, with its whichever way it goes, it's going to be an increasingly good environment to be in a high-risk environment, unencumbered by covenants. And so that's why I'm saying be really intentional about signing on the dotted line to start with. But the second piece of the puzzle is once I go in and I start a construction company, it's super important for me to be checking in every single week to make sure I'm on budget and I'm on plan. I don't have to be on time, but I need to be on budget, on plan. Every single week. That's kind of what I'm getting paid for in a construction company as the accountable leader. Do I have the 1, 2, maybe 3 people I need to set that up on a weekly basis? And do we have tracking systems to track that directly in and be really brutally honest about that position? Because if that position is depleting, the second piece of the puzzle is every 90 days, I need to get those people plus my bank manager and any other critical stakeholders in and spend a half to a full day pulling apart and rebuilding the entire scenario. This got approved on this scenario, but every 90 days I need to create a whole new, essentially, summary of where the project is at to say, these are all the things that have changed since we started. That could be 6, 7 quarters ago. But if I've done that every 90 days, my bank manager is sharing that accountability with me. My investors, if I've got key investors, are sharing that accountability with me, and there's no surprises every 90 days. And so doing that piece with brutal honesty and having 13 weeks worth of numbers to be able to bring into that meeting every quarter, as a property developer, there's nothing more that I can do, and it allows me to ask a critical question every 90 days. Not just of myself, but of the entire room. To just look to the room and get a show of hands to say, should I still be the primary owner of the accountability for the development of this asset? And if a majority say no, then we've got to have a conversation about that. And we've got 2, 3 quarters to figure that out. Whereas if I leave that too late, it's no longer a discussion. It's just the bank or the investors entering. Everyone loses when I do that. I lose the worst, but so does everyone else. No one else at that table wants to get in that position, but I, as the accountable leader, have to create that environment once every 90 days to have that conversation, to get all the data in the room, and then to ask that question.
Perfect. And earlier on, you spoke about influence versus, I suppose, authority. So how does the developer then, at that stage, influence at scale?
Super low levels of control in development. Like, we're working with trades. I'm going to say it to you again, and it's going to make your heart go 5 times faster. Trades, Imagine this industry if we had robots instead of trades, right? You know, like, but this is the reality of this industry. These people are craftspeople. And only they can do this at the moment. Until we develop an AI that's 1,000 times better, we're stuck with trades. And so we have to realize that the motivations of these people are fundamentally different to ours. They wake up in the morning to do good work. And that's it. And we have to be accountable for the quantity surveying on the way in and then keeping those quantities honest at every step of the puzzle. That's what we're being paid for, is to go and do that. Not to say, oh, trades, if only the trades were, the trades aren't. That's why we get paid the big bucks, is because we can take these fallible geniuses of handcraft and engineering and these amazing craftspeople and take all of that talent and turn it into a habitable space or a super functional factory or whatever it is that we specialise in.
That's right, because the developer can't go into the building
There's
site
no control.
and hammer in the nails,
There is no
right?
control. And so this is so important to really understand what is the process by which we keep those quantities known.
Yep.
It's not about controlling the quantities, it's about honesty and it's about agile responsiveness. And this is where I always say only have one construction company when you start. Don't try and develop two things at once. Just running one construction company and being able to rate and manage your trades and actually figure out who can really do what they say they're going to do and who can't, that's a big part of creating a good construction company.
But wouldn't the builder be doing that?
The builder is responsible for doing that. And this is where I get really animated.
Okay.
The builder's responsible for doing that, but guess who's accountable for doing that?
Sure.
It's still the developer. Does that make sense? And that's why good developers really agonize about, do I get a builder to do this or do I bring this in-house?
Right.
Because the reality is I can get the best builder in the world to do this. I'm still accountable. Yeah. And so why wouldn't I be building myself as an inspirational leader and bringing and inspiring a builder to come in-house and share that accountability at the leadership team level every week? Yeah. For me as an entrepreneur, I always would prefer to do that. And if I'm just doing a single play, I can do that and I can bring a good builder and groom them into a great builder who's part of my culture. Yeah. That asset at the end of your first proper construction build, like you make no money on that because you've put all of this stuff into it, but now I've got a construction company and I've got a builder in-house. That's an asset that then I can kick once every 5 years when I get a really nice ripe construction opportunity, I can kick it in there and I can make a killing and do truly beautiful work. Yeah. I can never do that when I get an outside build. When I've got that person in-house that's done 2, 3, 4 builds with me and they get me and they get the process, I can do something that's truly remarkable at super high margin.
Very cool. All right, so earlier on you spoke about a quantity surveyor and how much of a role does that person play in the whole scale process?
Every time I talk to anyone in this industry, they've got some issue with their quantity surveyor. My view is become a quantity surveyor.
If only it was so simple.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like this is the patent attorney or the quarterback of your construction company. Like in my view, if you don't already have a quantity surveyor that you would trust with your marriage, don't start a construction company.
Unborn kids, right?
Yeah? You know what I mean? Like, marry a quantity surveyor. You know what I mean? Like, because this role is the pivot role against which everything succeeds or fails in the areas that we can control. Yeah. There's so little that we can control, but the quantities, that's the thing that we can control. Yeah. And so over the long term as a property developer, like if I'm a private bank or an investment banker looking at who do I give my money to, I'm not looking at the developer, I'm looking at the QS. And I've worked with that QS on projects before and they're just honest and they just call it early. And if the developer gets ego inflammation and won't face it, the QS rings me direct and just says, this is not working. And they just wear that and they broker it so that there's never a breach of covenant. And that's the sort of quantity surveyor I want. Not just someone who's good on the numbers, but someone who's courageous. And they're in very short supply and they're super expensive. And that's why we see more and more QSs getting cut in on deals. Because I want that one person to share accountability with me. And if they're sharing accountability, they've got to get upside for that. But also, if they've got downside risk as well, guess what?
In the ideal world.
In the ideal world, but this is what I'm saying is, as an entrepreneur, part of building out my construction company, especially like if I'm unencumbered and I can build this out from scratch for the first time without needing cash flow and without banks breathing down my neck, then I can actually start to have some of those conversations and build the vision for that. And some of the best construction companies we see are those companies have been built that way.
Yep.
And if I am currently constrained by my covenants because I already have a construction company,
Yep.
maybe it's time to cool off with the construction, turn up my development side a little bit,
Right.
and actually really start to clean out that cash flow pipe a bit and get it leaner so that I can really get the quantity surveying pivot piece right, get the reporting correct, and get the right deals with the right person in that pivotal role.
Yeah, awesome. So out of this, what I've learned, influential leadership, quantity surveying. Have I missed anything?
That's the two key pieces. The main thing out of all of this is you can't delegate your accountability. You can't delegate that, no matter how much you want to. You have. I feel like if people are realistic about that, the quantity surveyor conversation becomes clearer and why that's so important. And do I use a separate builder or do I bring that in-house becomes much more relevant. Because especially on the first construction or the first construction after clean out, I'm not trying to make money. I'm trying to create a construction company that has integrity. And that can make me money time and time and time and time again, and I can give that to my kids and it'll just keep making money.
Brilliant.
That's an asset that's worth building.
Yep, awesome. Look, that was all that we sort of wanted to cover in the scale side of things. Now, if people want to learn more about you and the entrepreneurial leadership program that you've got, what do they need to do?
So I'll give you some information that you can pass on. There's just a really basic piece called the Crossroad that I can share with people, and if that seems relevant, then I'm just a normal guy. Like, I've got time to hang out, I can have a chat with you because I've only got 3 businesses and they're all working on these sorts of systems and processes. Other people are accountable for the day-to-day of the running of my businesses. So just reach out. I'm a normal guy. Let's have a chat.
Perfect. So we'll share that link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for your time. See you again.